Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us on Go Big or Go Home. I am Old Man Troy, joined by the spectacular youngster Kevin Cunningham, a.k.a. Kid Cunny on Twitter. What's you thinking today, my friend?
Not too much. There was something that popped up, by the way, Troy, that I wanted to mention to you because I thought about it earlier today. Every Monday, for those that don't know, during the NFL season, I talk to Montreal in Canada, Montreal's top sports station, and the host has been having me on every Monday through the NFL season for the last 3 years or something, and his name is Tony. His name's Tony Marinero, and so I bring that up because every single time he has me on, he says, hey, Kevin, how's it going, da-da-da-da-da. And I say, oh, great, Tony. And I always think while I say that or right after I say it, oh, my God, I hope I don't call him Troy. Because we talk multiple times every single week for the last few years. So it's always oh, my God, don't call him Troy. Don't call him Troy. So it's just so close, I guess, being 4 letters.
Well, people call me Tony. It's funny you say that. I mean, I've been on my same route now for almost 2 years. There's people who still call me Tony. And I don't even correct them. I don't. It's just yeah, whatever. Yep, I did my job. I'm off. Goodbye. See you in a week.
Yeah.
Okay, Tony. I'm like, oh, yeah, whatever.
So, Tony,
no.
I got a question for you, Tony. What kind of rock star, you always bring up rock star, so what kind of rock star drink are you drinking today, Tony?
Yeah, so it used to be Kickstart. It used to be Kickstart Grape for every show. And now Rockstar was on sale a couple weeks ago, 3 for $5. And now today was 4 for $5. So I've completely changed. It is now Rockstar on the way home, Rockstar when we do our shows. Today I am drinking Rockstar Whipped Strawberry, and it is actually very delicious. There's 800 Rockstar flavors.
Right.
This one is very delicious. I got to slow down. It's so delicious, so smooth that I would be able to slam it. But I don't think Rockstar is one of those drinks you should be slamming. So
probably not.
No, especially not 4 of them sitting on my seat. Now I didn't get all Rockstar Whipped Strawberry. It was 4 for $5. So I got 4 different kinds. But for today's show, drinking a little Rockstar Whipped Strawberry. We got a good show today, though. Little football, little basketball. We're finally into the combo show. That's what we call it. Little football, little basketball. I'm ready to get rocking and rolling, my friend. Only a couple bowl games, though, before next week. So let's move right into it. We're going to do some Big Ten bowl previews.
Yeah, I want to start with this, too. While we're kicking it off, this week's show with football, Wednesday, the 19th, December 19th, is when the early signing period starts. And I don't think they ever did this before last year. I think last year was the first time they implemented this. I think it's the 19th to the 21st is the early signing period. So next week's show, past Christmas, we'll be talking after Christmas. That'll be our next show.
And you know how much I love early signing periods.
Yeah. Yes, you do.
I think they're like stone. They're like chiseling your name in a stone, these early signing periods. Yes, they are.
Yeah. I mean, it's at least official at this point, Well, not at this point, but once they actually do, quote unquote, sign, the dotted line and, or actually participate in that early signing period, at least it's official. Finally. I think for Wisconsin, honestly, we're going to talk about Wisconsin today, a little preview to that. For Wisconsin, they have this quarterback who's a top 5 quarterback recruit, and once he actually signs his name on the dotted line and says, yes, I'm actually going to Wisconsin next fall, that'll be, if I were a Wisconsin fan, I'd be jumping for joy for that day to actually happen. I don't know if Graham Mertz is his name, I don't know if he's participating in the early signing period and signing his name or not. But that's something as a Wisconsin fan I'd be jumping for joy at because you hear all the time.
You brought it up, so we might as well just stay right on it then. Here's the thing. We talk about verbal commitments all the time, right?
Yeah. Right.
So if this kid is gung-ho, and you've talked about it. He's out on social media saying he can't wait to be a Badger, blah, 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 all this good stuff, everything a Badger fan wants to hear. If he doesn't sign in the early signing period, Kevin, then my hopes go down the drain. They really do. Because when you got a kid out there doing those things, and then all of a sudden, I'm going to wait and not sign during the early signing period, why? I thought you wanted to come so bad. Get it over with. Sign your scholarship.
Yep.
So that's, to me, one of the things. So I'm not I understand it, early signing period, but fine. It is what it is. But maybe I'm just more of a skeptic because of my age. I don't know. But all these guys that get all excited about a school, right? Yeah, I'm going to your school, and all the fans are like, woo, yeah, we got this guy. Woo, we're going to be great. Well, then why don't you sign during the early signing period? So to me, I'm kind of looking at it like not who do you sign, but if you sign these players that are all gung-ho to go to your school. And if they don't, I would be skeptical because, like you said, it's official. It's not a verbal time period. It's an official early signing period. Get off the books. Take your name off the books. Get all the other schools away from you. So if you're a top recruit and you don't sign during this, what it tells me is, well, let's just hang out here for a while, see if something better comes along.
Yep.
That's what it means to me. I just wanted to throw that out there, youngster. Maybe, again, I'm a big skeptic of it that way. But if you're so, you can relate it to life. You want to make a purchase. So, for example, you want to make a purchase, let's say a new washer and dryer. It's on sale, good sale. You go to the store, you look at it, you like it, you love everything about it. Sale ends on Saturday, and you're like, I'm not going to buy it today. I'm going to wait and see if maybe another sale comes up somewhere else.
Yep.
That's the way I'm looking at it. So, again, I understand it. Good. I like it. It's okay. It's just one of those things. If these guys don't sign early, what are they waiting for? Well, they're waiting for a better offer is what they're waiting for.
Yep.
So that'll be the thing that I look for. I'll turn it back over to you, my friend.
If you and a girl are hanging out, and not talking about Troy or I here because we've got wives, it's very weird to say that I've got a wife with you, Troy. But anyway, it's like a girl is you're hanging out with a girl for a couple weeks, and she asks, hey, when are we going to make this official? When are we going to be, officially boyfriend and girlfriend? And you're like, you know what? Let's just wait like a week. Just give me some time, and then we'll make it official. Well, she would respond like, what are you talking about? Why would we have to wait, a week or, whatever the time period is? Because you're weighing your other options. And this is the same exact thing, like you said, with the washer, dryer, or whatever it was. You're weighing your other options. If you love it so much, then just commit. And that's exactly what this is. I believe it's the 19th through the 21st, Wednesday through Friday. I don't think it's any longer than that. But so, yeah, a lot of recruits are starting to, not starting to, because again, I think last year was the first year of this, but I think a lot of recruits, not that there's always been an early signing period, but I think they moved it up a lot starting last year. And I think that a very solid amount of commits, that verbal commits, actually did commit during that early signing period a year ago. So I think this year it's going to be much of the same, where a lot of your class is going to be signed in this 3-day period coming up this week. So just wanted to mention that, and glad I did, because we talked about it for a while.
Well, see, now we talked about what we're going to do on the show. You bring this topic up. Now I got to add my little 2 cents of when I was coaching and how I think that this should play out. I know you love stories. I'm not going to tell you a story. I'm just going to give you kind of my thought. Didn't have this when I was coaching. So what I'm looking at here, Kevin, is I would hope that all my recruits sign in the early signing period, because then I know who's coming and who's not. And like I said, if I'm a coach, if I was coaching right now and I went out and I had a recruit and he didn't sign during the early signing period, I'm not going to drop him off the book, right? I'm not going to say, well, I'm taking my scholarship away. If you're not signing out, that's crap. No, I'm not going to do that. But all of a sudden, I'm going to put a little red flag there. Like, all right, so I might have to replace this recruit. But then the other ones, let's say, for example, in soccer, I usually had a recruiting class 10 to 12, somewhere in there. And let's say 8 of them signed in the early signing period. Great. I know I got 8. And I've got 4 that are solid, but why didn't they take this offer right now? So that, to me, allows me to do some planning. Now, you're out there, and I know the world of college football is a lot different than college soccer. Don't think I'm comparing the two apples to apples. Soccer, I think there's a little more opportunity to still get a quality recruit, if that would be the case. Football, maybe not so much. But my point is, now I've got these 4 guys out of my 12 that I wanted that they still could commit, but I better get plan B in place. So all of a sudden, there goes plan B. I'm going out and being like, okay, I can't really offer because if those 4 sign, then I'm kind of screwed on my scholarship. But I can go out and I can recruit and I can get plan B in place. So when I get that phone call saying, you know what, Coach, thanks for all your time. Thanks for coming to visit my family. Thanks for coming to watch me play. But I've decided to go to ABC University. All right, thank you. I've gotten plenty of those phone calls, youngster. It happens all the time. And so you don't want to be kind of caught in the cold with, oh, great, I was counting on him. No, if they don't sign in this early signing period, I think, and again, I'm not coaching right now, and so I don't know how the coaches are thinking. If any coaches are listening, let us know. Find us on Twitter at TroyRobert967, at Kid Cunny, and our show handle is at YoungsterOldMan. We'd like to know, what is your thought during that early signing period? Do you go to a plan B if one of your guys doesn't commit early, or how do you approach that? And, Kevin, you know me, I'm pretty straightforward. I might ask a kid, are you signing? Right. Are you going to commit during the early signing period? If the answer would be no, I think you know me well enough. I would be like, why not?
Right.
Everything you said to me, I've offered you a scholarship. You like our program. You like me as far as I know. Why don't you want to sign during the early signing period? What's wrong? What are you going to wait for? And I would just find out. And if it's because he wants to entertain other offers, great.
Right.
Fine. You're going to entertain other offers. I'm going to go recruit someone else. Doesn't mean I'm going to give your scholarship away, but I'm going to go recruit somebody else. So I just wanted to throw that out there. Now let's move into our main topic of the show, unless you got anything else.
I was going to say I've got 2 things. Nate Stanley, Iowa quarterback, made his decision actually just a few hours ago, as we're recording this. A few hours ago, not putting his papers in for the NFL draft. He is going to return as a senior for the Iowa Hawkeyes, so Hawkeye fans can, obviously cheer for that. Nate Stanley is
I think that's a good move, youngster, for him.
I would agree. Yeah.
He wasn't going to be a top 10 pick.
No.
Some people say, well, if you're ready to go and you can support your family. I think for Stanley, another year, get some more throws in, get some more game time, get some more experience. I think it'll help him. Could he play at the NFL level? Well, I think for him it'll be like a lot of guys we've talked about. It needs to be the right situation. Needs to be a good situation for him to be able to go in. I don't think he walks in and becomes a starter in day one.
Right.
But could he be a viable backup? I think. But I think another year of college football at Iowa will do him good to prepare a little bit more for the NFL. And I think that's a guy that can go in there and, maybe latch on with a team or two. There's definitely nothing wrong with being a backup quarterback in the NFL, as much as the starting quarterbacks get injured, even with the new rules. So good for him. I think that was the right move for Mr. Stanley.
I think so too. And also, I guess, 3 things. There's another thing that came out last week, I guess I should say. Penn State coach James Franklin was talking to reporters about something. I don't know what, but he was asked about basically the NFL draft and kids, how does he go about that? And, do you tell them, if they're a good player, basically, hey, you should probably stick in school, because you obviously want them to stick in school as the head coach. You want your good players to return another year for you. He said that when he talked to Saquon Barkley before last season, he said, you need to leave after this season. And that was his junior season. So before last year started, he told Saquon Barkley, you need to leave after this season. I thought that's pretty cool. Really, if you're a coach and you're looking out for your star running back who only has so many touches before his knees go out and he gets limited as a running back, to say that, hey, you're going to be a star, you're going to do amazing things this year, everyone knows it in the country, including us. And so at the end of this year, goodbye, see ya. I want you to go because I know you're going to be successful and I want you to have a long career. And that also helps the program as well, if you really think about it. And, because right now, Saquon Barkley, anything good he does is good publicity for Penn State going forward. So, obviously.
Yeah, and I think what he did, Kevin, as a coach, if your player has reached basically, and I'll say it this way, the top of the college mountain.
Yeah.
You know if there's any areas of improvement. You know what's right for that kid. But you're right. I'm sure there's a lot of coaches out there that would just be like, oh, yeah, you're not ready. You need to come back because we need to try and win a national title.
Right.
No, I think that's pretty cool. But as a coach, you know which players are pretty much tapped out. And when I mean that in a good way. Like, there's nothing more for you to prove at the college level. You're at the pinnacle of your game. Now, again, I was a Division II soccer coach. I didn't have players that were getting ready to go into the MLS draft or go sign over in England or overseas. Right. So most of my guys, they're 4-year guys. They got a lot to learn. But I had a couple players, Kevin, that were just on the brink of All-American status. Good players. But even those guys, they were working hard because it's like, hey, you know what? Hey, you need to work on that left foot. You need to work on making this move. You've got only 2 moves. Guys are watching film, they're going to know what moves you're going to do. You need to start doing some combination stuff in here. You need to start making more movement off the ball. There's a lot of things that I could do, but again, my guys weren't going into the MLS draft. They weren't being recruited by any clubs overseas, so It was a little different beast for me. I was a Division II guy. My players always could improve. But no, I thought that's cool that Franklin did that. But as a coach, I just wanted to throw that out there, youngster. We know, and if there's nothing more to prove in college, I agree. Tell the kid he should go because otherwise it's just greedy. And at the end of the day, you're a coach and you're looking out for the best interest of your student athletes. And I did throw it out that way because as a college coach, they were student athletes. They weren't just athletes. And they are human beings. I coach both men and women, so they were women, they were men, and outside of the sport, they have a life, and they have goals and dreams that they need to pursue. And so, no, I'm happy he did that. I'm happy he said that.
Yeah, agreed. I thought it was cool at the time when I heard it, obviously. The other thing I wanted to mention, too, was, and you also brought up soccer. That's another thing to sidetrack for a second. The Champions League draw came out for the round of 16. That starts like mid-February or something, but that also happened earlier today. Not that we're going to go over that on the show, but
not on the Big Ten show. Maybe on our Saturday show we will.
Yeah, maybe. But, yeah, my Napoli team. The only thing they had to do was not lose to Liverpool by 1 goal in the final leg of the final match day. And what did they do? They lost to Liverpool by 1 goal. So they finished 3rd in their division and group and did not advance to the round of 16. So that was annoying. But anyway, to football, unless you got something to piggyback off there, Troy.
Nah, I'll save it for Saturday.
Okay, sounds good. Minnesota recruiting, I just want to mention this very quickly before we get into the 2 bowl games that we're going to cover today, and also fairly rapidly. But so a lot of back talk these first 20 minutes before the bowl season. But Minnesota got another 4-star recruit, another 4-star D tackle. They already had a 4-star D tackle, and again, the early signing period is coming up. So, I'm assuming if you're committing a few days before the early signing period verbally that you're going to commit wholeheartedly and actually put pen to paper. That would be my assumption. But just wanted to bring that up because it was, probably the biggest recruiting shindig for the Big Ten this week. And PJ Fleck, I think he's starting to build something in Minnesota. I like Fleck, and I like what he's doing in Minnesota, and I believe in what he's doing in Minnesota. And I think that Minnesota making it this year means something for that program and him and actually building something. So to say that you got to a bowl game means something for Minnesota football. It doesn't mean something for Wisconsin, Penn State, Michigan, Michigan State, Ohio State. You're expected to make a bowl. So anyway, wanted to mention that as well for Minnesota football. But now, finally, we can move on to the bowl game, and there's two of them. December 26th, wanted to mention. We've got the Quick Lane Bowl. I had to check on the name because there's just a couple different names for bowl games now. Quick Lane Bowl. Speaking of Minnesota,
there's just a couple bowl games out there.
Yeah, just a few. The Quick Lane Bowl on December 26th, Minnesota is playing Georgia Tech. And this is taking place for those Minnesota fans that really want to know. December 26th at 5:15 p.m. Eastern on ESPN, so the game will be on ESPN. All these games will be on that we ever talk about for bowl games and the Big Ten. They're all on the national television, so no issues trying to find these games. There shouldn't be anyway. So ESPN, December 26th, Quick Lane Bowl, Minnesota, Georgia Tech. Not necessarily to get into a ton of X's and O's because it's a bowl game and it is what it is. Again, like I said, it's cool for Minnesota to make one of these, and they are one of, 9? Yeah, 9 Big Ten teams to make a bowl game. So that's cool. Overall, this game in and of itself, if you want to talk about X's and O's for a second, Georgia Tech is always that program that runs the triple option, and they will run it probably 40, 50 times in this game, and that's not an exaggeration. I'm sure if they wanted to, they would run it 60 times.
It'll all depend on the flow of the game, Kevin. If the triple option is working and it's confusing Minnesota, they're going to stick at it. Why would you get away from it?
Right.
I've had a chance, living in Western PA, to be able to follow Georgia Tech a little bit. And when they run that and teams can't stop it, they just stick to it. And any good coach is going to do that. And so it is not easy to defend. But the thing that I look at with Georgia Tech, if it's not working, then what do they really have? Because that's their bread and butter. And so I feel that I've earned the right to be able to talk about Minnesota now after I haven't been talking all year about Minnesota. And the reason, youngster, is that it's a bowl game. And again, I don't want to say it doesn't matter, because if you're in Minnesota, maybe it does matter to win the bowl game. But we've talked about it on the show. The bowl game, in all reality,
it's an exhibition game.
It is.
I mean, it literally is.
You get extra practice time, and that's the one thing when I joke about all of these bowl games that are out there. Fine, you get extra practice time, set up an exhibition, blah, blah, blah. It is what it is. But it's good to get the extra practice time. It really is. You want to practice as much as you can. So it gives you that extended time to practice. But I think I've earned the right now to talk about Minnesota because the game, like you said, Kevin, at the end of the day, kind of like an exhibition game. So if they win, great. If they don't win, I mean, people are going to care. If you're a fan, you want your team to win. But for Minnesota to be able to go out and play against Georgia Tech, if they can get them to disrupt that triple option, then they might have some success. But the thing with Minnesota, and the reason I stopped talking about them, is I get high on them, and then boom, they poo the bed.
Right.
They were very inconsistent. Maybe this extra practice time preparing for one opponent, knowing who it is, being able to prepare for the triple option, I think is a pretty big advantage because you've got some extra time. Now, during the regular season when Georgia Tech plays an opponent, yeah, they've got film. Maybe it's a conference foe, so they've went up against it before. But at the end of the day, you can prepare for it. The only problem is you've got guys on your scout team that probably don't run that triple option as effectively as Georgia Tech runs it. The thing that you'll notice, youngster, they can make it look so easy in some games, but then those teams that learn how to disrupt it, it kind of pokes a hole in their tire. And then they're kind of running on 3 tires. Boom, 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 boom. And so Georgia Tech kind of puts all their eggs in one basket in my mind. Anyway, I wanted to throw that out there. But Minnesota, hey, good for them. They made the bowl game. Maybe it was because I shut up and didn't talk about them after they lost a few games when I got high on their horse. So good luck, Gophers. Go do it. Go out and make the Big Ten proud. That's all I'm going to say, youngster.
Yeah. Hear you, and I agree wholeheartedly. If there's one team that you would want a month to prepare for, and having a month to prepare for Ohio State or Michigan or Alabama or Clemson, that's awesome. But a team like Georgia Tech, a team like Navy, a team like Texas Tech, a team like Hawaii, I name those teams because they're either running like the triple option or they're throwing it 70 times a game. So you want time to prepare for that, and you know exactly what's going to happen. When you play Texas Tech, you know exactly what's going to happen. At some point, you're going to have a running back in the backfield, and you're going to have 4 wide receivers, or you're going to see 5 wide receivers. There's basically no other options. Texas Tech is just going to throw the football. Once in a while, they'll do a little draw play or a little screen to the running back, but otherwise, they're just throwing. The same goes for Hawaii. The same goes for some certain Cal teams, but overall, Texas Tech just absolutely throws the heck out of the ball every single year. There's teams that throw the ball more often than not in general, but Texas Tech is one of those exceptions, and it's the same thing with Georgia Tech. You know the triple option is coming. It's coming every single play. They'll throw it less than 10 times in the game. Even if they're down 21-0, and I give them props for this, they'll actually stick to what they want to do. Because you see it in the NFL when a team is down 14-3 in the second quarter and they start throwing the ball all over the field, even though they're the Tennessee Titans or the Baltimore Ravens and they want to run it. And yet they're sitting there throwing it because they're down 11 points in the second quarter. And it's like, you've got 35 minutes left in the game. What are you doing? But we see that every Saturday, every Sunday, every Monday. Teams get away from what they want to do much earlier than what they should. Georgia Tech won't. Georgia Tech's not going to throw the ball 20 times. Georgia Tech's not going to feel like they have to throw the ball just because they're down 11 points in the second quarter or the third quarter or the fourth quarter, unless there's probably 2 minutes left. Then probably you'll see them throw it down by 2 scores. But, yes, to piggyback off what you're saying, if there is a team you want 3 weeks, a month to prepare for, Georgia Tech is the perfect candidate for the team you want that much time to prepare for. As far as a prediction and who's going to win, I honestly, I'm an Ohio State fan, and I want them to win because it's Urban Meyer's last game. And like you said, if you're a fan, you want your team to win. But if Washington beat Ohio State 31-17, the next day I wake up and I think nothing of it. Just like I would think nothing of Ohio State beating Washington 31-17. So as far as giving a prediction, I honestly don't know. These teams are both fine. That's why they're in this bowl game. They didn't do fantastic. They didn't do terrible. Georgia Tech is going to prove to be problematic with the system they run. They're just hard to defend in general, no matter who you are. So who wins? I don't know. Does it matter? It really doesn't. As long as you're not embarrassed, I guess I should say that. It does matter. You don't want to go into these bowl games and lose 38-0. Because if you don't have kids sign in the early signing period and they say, oh, gee, look, P.J. Fleck in his second season made it to a bowl game. What'd they do? Well, they got killed by Georgia Tech, who went, whatever it was, 6-6, 7-5, whatever they went. That's not helpful to you to see your team get killed in a bowl game. So I'll say that it matters from that standpoint. But other than that, it doesn't matter. And as far as a prediction goes, I mean, I'm not even going to give one because it's just, it is what it is. It's a bowl game.
I'll make a prediction.
Okay.
Youngster. Minnesota and Georgia Tech are going to play a good game.
There you go. I would agree with that. I'd agree
It'll be
wholeheartedly.
interesting. I mean, it's a bowl game.
Yeah.
I know I sit here and I joke about how many stupid bowl games are out there, but again, we do a Big Ten show. I'm a Big Ten guy. I grew up with Wisconsin. I love the Big Ten. Minnesota's one of the original Big Ten participants. I'll probably catch the game. I'll be, depending on what my schedule is. I mean, it's 5:15. You know that we'll probably be doing a show when it's on, but I might be able to catch some of it at the end. So I do want the Big Ten to do well, but I want doing well to me, Kevin, doesn't mean a W. Like you said, if Minnesota goes out there and they go through what they're trying to build for the future, going through what their identity is, and they're out there playing a good, hard football game, and they play well, and they happen to come up on the other side of the coin and don't win the game, I'm not going to be like, oh, Minnesota sucks because they lost to Georgia Tech. And what was it, the Quick Loop Bowl? Who cares?
Quick lean. Exactly.
Whatever, I don't know what it is. I mean, there's so many different, like you said, so many different names. I just want, for any of the Big Ten teams, I mean, I just want them to go out and play well. I mean, as a conference, that's what you want. Because we've talked about it. People say, well, the Big Ten's better than such and such because they got 9 teams in there and they won 7. Yeah, well, let's look at what the other team did. Is the other team playing with their full complement of players? Are there players sitting out that are going to be drafted? Blah, blah, blah. Has the coach decided that, you know what, you're a junior running back that is going to be our stud next year, and I'm going to play you in the first quarter because I really don't want to risk you tearing an ACL in a meaningless bowl game. And you know what's going to happen, Kevin? There's a guy that's going to be the superstar for next year, and the coach is going to say, look, we're limiting your touches in this game. It means nothing to us. You're going to get 10 carries, and then you're on the bench because your backup is going to get some valuable game time. And I don't have a problem with that. I really don't. As a former coach, you want to get your players in as much game situation that you can. So why not use this bowl game as that opportunity? So, again, the wins and losses, they're nice because as a fan, you want to win. As a Wisconsin fan, I want the Badgers to win, but at the end of the day, I want them to go out and play well because do we know who's all going to play and who they're playing against? So they're not playing for a national championship. So, you know what? Play some of the younger guys. Let them get some valuable experience. Carry on, my friend.
Agree wholeheartedly. The last thing I'll add with this is, and you mentioned it, guys getting injured and, hey, you're coming back next year. Awesome. Like if you're Nate Stanley and you're Iowa and you're playing Mississippi State in the Outback Bowl, it's like, do you really play Nate Stanley 75 snaps? Or maybe do you just let him play the first half or the second half, whatever it is? To me, I get it. I'm there with you 100%. Northwestern last year, Clayton Thorson, the quarterback, coming back for his senior year this year, he tore his ACL in the bowl game last year. Did it hurt Northwestern at the start of this year? I don't know, but they went 0-3 in the non-conference. So maybe it did. Maybe it did just a little bit, and maybe that affected them a little bit. At the end of the day, did they make the Big Ten championship? Yes. Did they have Thorson healthy for the Big Ten championship? Yes. So at the end of the day, did it really make any difference? I don't know. I mean, who knows, I guess, what would have happened had Northwestern maybe ran through their non-conference schedule and won every game. I don't know. Effort is different. If you're on the Cleveland Browns and you're 4-7 earlier this year and you're playing a team, are you giving 100%? Are you really giving 100% depending on who you are, the exact situation on every single play? Or if you're 11-0, if you're 10-1 and you're fighting for the 1 seed, are you giving 100% on every play? Probably. You probably are. And you feel good about playing because you're on a good team and you know your teammates are around you, are caring and giving 100%. The effort level is different. So who knows what would happen. But anyway, yeah, that case A, Exhibit A right there is Northwestern quarterback last year in the bowl game tore his ACL. And it affected him. It affected the team earlier this season to start. Anyway, moving on, Minnesota, Georgia Tech. Again, we're not necessarily giving a score preview, but I'm with you, Troy. I think it'll be a good game. The next one and the last one we're going to talk about on this week's show is Wisconsin-Miami. And these two teams, like we said a week ago, they played each other last year in the bowl game. It was much later. It was a few days later, and that's because both teams did really well. And they played in the Orange Bowl, and that game was played at Miami. Like at Miami, exactly where Miami plays. A year ago, Wisconsin won that game. This year, they're playing in the Pinstripe Bowl, a little different than the Orange Bowl. And this is played at Yankee Stadium, actually, in New York. So it'll be a cool venue, cool atmosphere if you're a Wisconsin fan and you're going there, or if you're watching it on television. It'll at least be interesting from that perspective. But these two teams are playing each other again. They obviously, I think they're both 7-5 coming into this game. Obviously, not what they were a season ago. And I am not going to pretend for a second that I know the ins and outs of Miami and whether they have a good quarterback or a star running back or a great defense or whatever. I don't know. I honestly don't. They were supposed to be good to start this year, and then they got killed by LSU in week 1, I think it was. And then that's basically the last we heard of Miami, because they went 7-5. They were a disappointment. So I can't even tell you what to expect as a Wisconsin fan from Miami this year in this bowl game on December 27th. Again, 5:15 p.m. Eastern time start on ESPN again. But the only real news that I have for this game is that Wisconsin senior linebacker Ryan Connolly was dealing with an injury. He's been dealing with an injury, but he's been playing through it, said he couldn't play through it any longer, and so he had surgery, and so his career as a Badger is done. He hopes to be in the NFL. I don't know his draft stock and all that stuff, but he's going to be out of this game, and Miami's defensive tackle Jared Willis III will be out of this game, and that's notable because he is a second-team All-American this year, the entire country. So that will be helpful for Wisconsin in terms of pass protection. That will be helpful for Wisconsin in terms of opening up holes in the middle for Jonathan Taylor to run wild. So that's, I guess, good news if you want to call an injury good news. That's good news if you're a Wisconsin fan. It'll make life easier on that day against Miami. But those are the only two real notable things I have for this game. I've got, again, as far as a prediction goes, like I said, I don't know enough about Miami to give a prediction.
I'm going to predict it's going to be cold.
Yeah, that's probably a good day.
I'm a Badger fan. I'm not going to make any prediction. My one thing, again, Kevin, I'm going to kind of circle back to what I said in the earlier game with Minnesota. You got Taylor there. The season was not what you wanted it to be. You're 7-5. Is Taylor the guy you want to give the ball to 30 times like you did in the regular season when you were trying to win Big Ten games? Or do you want to get some of your younger guys in there? And even that offensive line. I mean, honestly, if I'm one of those linemen, I'm going to be like, you know what, Coach? I really am looking 4 years down the road, and I'll go out and I'll play a little bit. But like you said, Kevin, especially with these two teams, yeah, and again, I was an athlete. I don't want people thinking, me on this side of the phone saying, they don't care. They want to play. Kids want to play. I wanted to play when I was an athlete too. But my mindset, we're 7-5. We're playing in the Pinstripe Bowl. We're not even in warm weather. We're in New York playing a game at the end of December. I know we're used to the cold if I'm Wisconsin, but it's like, really? All my hard work throughout the year, we're 7-5, and now we go to a cold bowl game. That's not really fun for me. And Miami, on the other hand, we're from Miami. A crap season, disappointing, And so now we get shipped up north. We can't even stay in
Right.
warm weather.
And it's 2 days after Christmas. It's 2 days after Christmas, too. Like, that sucks. It honestly does. For both these teams, it sucks. For Minnesota, it doesn't suck as much. Because Minnesota, you're happy to make a bowl game. These two teams were supposed to win 10 games this year. They didn't. They were both very big disappointments. They were.
Yeah.
So to have to travel up north to the cold and 2 days after Christmas, oh, hey, family, yeah, Christmas, awesome, great, fantastic. Oh, look, we have to get on a plane because I'm playing in a bowl game in 2 days. That's not fantastic. So you could see some fairly ugly, scrubbish football being played early on, at least. You know, with as far as penalties and drops or missed throws or whatever. You could see it because of the mentality of it. I could see that 100% in this game.
And I'll even go down this road with Wisconsin. I mean, you're talking about a team that was in the top 10 in the preseason.
Yeah.
And a team that now is 7-5. They get the extra practice because they get a bowl game. If I'm a player on that team, do I really want to strap on my helmet anymore?
Right.
I mean, the season we pooed the bed, big time. You know, now we got to extend it. And I'm not saying they shouldn't have accepted the invitation, because if you don't accept the invitation, you can't get the younger guys on the field, right? So that's what I'm saying. In this game, if I'm Chris, I really want to start looking at, okay, defensively we weren't as strong as 2 years ago. We had a lot of new guys. We want to try to get back to where we were 2 years ago, because that defense was stellar 2 years ago. And you had a lot of playmakers, but maybe you got one of those guys sitting on the bench that played in mop-up duty during the Big Ten season. Let the kid play 60 snaps. That's what I would do in this game. Because as a fan, Kevin, I could care less about the outcome. The reason I'm going to watch, I want to see who plays. I want to see some of the backups play. I want to see some of the young guys that might play next year. You already know what the starters can do. And they didn't do much this year. They were, like you said, they were a disappointment. And as a fan, I'm very disappointed. They didn't live up to their expectations. And I'm not putting all of it on Hornibrook, because you know how much I love him. I'm not putting it all on his shoulders. But he didn't play well at times either. But it's a team effort. Defensively, they couldn't make stops. They couldn't get off the field on third down. So how are you going to fix that? Well, here's an exhibition game. Try to implement some things. See if there's some guys that you maybe you can move them positions. Maybe you can get some of those younger backups in the game and see what they do in a real game situation. Now, again, Miami is not going to be playing with their full complement of starters either. But as a fan, I could care less what the end of this game is. Now, I want Wisconsin to win because I'm a Badger fan. But if they go out and win ugly, Kevin, and let's say Hornibrook plays the whole game and goes 12 for 34 and throws for $190 and throws 4 interceptions, but they win the game because the Miami turns the ball over 6 times, is that going to make me happy as a Badger fan? No, it's not.
Right.
I want them to go out and I want to see if this practice actually paid off. Now, if the second string guys are in there and there's some mistakes and some sloppy play, I can kind of live with that if that makes any sense to you. But if I'm gonna see Chris roll his starters out for 60 minutes again and see the same old crap that I saw for 12 games, I don't want it. I'll turn it off. I really will. And that's a Badger fan talking, Kevin. But if the backups are in there and they're playing and they make some mistakes or there's a holding call because the backup tackles in and he's getting some real game experience, okay. Learning experience. Too bad. Don't do it again. Learn from it. Because who knows when you're going to be called upon next year. That I will watch. But I'm not going to watch the 12 starters. The 22 starters that are out there doing the same crap that I've seen all year. To me, I will turn it off. And I don't turn off Badger games very often. But I would do it if that's the case. That's all I got.
I hear you. 2 quick things I want to mention. Jonathan Taylor is 34 yards from getting 4,000 for his career rushing. That's pretty interesting. 4,000 yards rushing in your sophomore year. By your sophomore year, there are only 4 other players to ever do that. One of them is Troy Davis from Iowa State. I have no idea who that is. The other 3, I have an idea who they are. Melvin Gordon, Wisconsin fan.
You never heard of Troy Davis?
Troy Davis out of Iowa State? I don't know.
Okay. That's because you're a young guy.
When did he play? Is that like 80s? 70s?
I'm trying to. I can't pinpoint the exact year, but yeah, you may not even have been born yet. No, I think you were born, but you probably weren't a college football fan at that point.
Yeah.
But to interrupt with a point here, so let him get this record, and then get his behind on the bench.
Yeah.
Because as soon as especially in a game like this, and we just talked about it, no real intrinsic value here. Nobody's really, they're going to go play, and they're going to play for pride. It's going to be sloppy. It's going to be cold. One bad cut, one wrong tackle, boom, ACL gone. I don't want that. I do not want that to happen. Let him get his 4,000 yards, and then take his helmet away. I don't want to see Taylor play beyond the middle of the second quarter, Kevin. That might even be too long for me. I really don't. And we know what Taylor can do. Does he really need to play another game? A meaningless game? My answer, no. And to put more mileage on those legs, why? Why take more hits? Don't have to do it. Game means nothing. All right, that's all I got.
Yeah, I agree with you. Again, the other 3 names, want to mention them because everyone definitely knows these names. And if you were, alive and watching college football, I'm sure you do know who Troy Davis is. To get to this mark, obviously, in 2 years is impressive. The other 3 names, Melvin Gordon, LaDainian Tomlinson, and Ricky Williams. Everyone knows who those guys are. So, again, an impressive list. Wanted to mention that. And the other thing, last year against Miami, Alex Hornibrook actually threw 4 touchdowns in that game. It was a 34-24 win for Wisconsin in Miami, again in the Orange Bowl a year ago.
See, now you're going to get me going, youngster. You bring this up because if you remember after that bowl game, I'm like, okay, maybe he'll progress. So that's the problem with Hornibrook, Kevin. He has the potential to go out there and actually play really well.
Yeah.
But then he poos the bed. And it's like he's never played football before. So he has proven to me that he can do it against a really good team, but then he doesn't do it week in and week out. That's my problem with him. But he still cannot consistently stretch the field. And in college football, you need a quarterback that can consistently or at least give you the threat of stretching the field with the deep ball. And Hornibrook can't do that.
Yeah. J.T. Barrett last year for Ohio State couldn't do it consistently. He couldn't. That was their big issue a year ago. 2 years ago, still couldn't obviously do it efficiently. They got to the college football playoff, and they got killed by Clemson. It was like 31-0. They didn't score because Clemson's great defense didn't have to respect the deep ball. And if you're really seriously going for a national title, you're going to play a Clemson, a Georgia, an Alabama, an Oklahoma. Oklahoma's a bad example here, but a halfway decent defense that has to respect. If you're going to win a college football title, you're going to play 2 really good teams. You're going to have to score. You're not going to beat 2 elite teams in college football 17-10. It's just not going to happen. You can be the Steelers and do that against the Patriots, but Troy and I will be talking about that game later on this week. Follow us on Twitter at youngsteroldman if you like our voices, if you like what we have to say in general, if you like NFL football, if you like the Steelers, if you like the Browns, if you like NFL football in general. Follow us on Twitter at youngsteroldman because that's where Troy posts all of our shows that we do, and we do an exclusive NFL show during the NFL season. So anyway, just wanted to give that a quick plug while I still had that on my mind. But yeah, Alex Hornibrook, 4 touchdowns in last year's game. The last thing I wanted to mention is if I'm Paul Chryst, I say, hey, look, we've got this huge monster quarterback recruit coming in, and look what we did this year. We went 7-5. I wouldn't be this blunt, but, you got hurt. You didn't prove yourself this year. Basically, here you go. You played against Miami a year ago, and you did really well. Let's see what you do this year. We've got someone coming in who is very capable to be the starting quarterback here and to hand the ball off to Jonathan Taylor 30 times and run play action off of it and be very efficient. Graham Mertz can do that as long as he signs in the early signing period. He can do that. Okay? So let's see what you can do against Miami. And if this is like basically the last trial period, and obviously we've got months until next year starts, so it's not really the last trial period, but this will be the last game until there is a starter named for 2019. This is the final game. So let's see what Hornibrook can do. And again, as last year showed, even if he does really well, what does that really mean for the year ahead? But if you see bad play, all the more reason to start the freshman next year. I would 100% no matter what Hornibrook does, but that's just me. Anyway, unless you got anything else, Troy, we can move on to basketball and what took place.
Yeah, let's do it. Basketball time. Let's do it.
Good deal. So there's 7 other bowl games that we'll talk about next week. Actually, it might only be 4, and then we'll get to the last 3 on a separate week. But anyway, regardless, moving on to basketball, the latest AP rankings, it's kind of like college football where the AP rankings, I mean, what does it really mean? Because at the end of the year, there's a different committee that decides your placement in the postseason. But it's interesting to look at because it's, gives a gauge as to how these teams are doing. For the Big Ten, Troy, I wanted to ask you a question. The Big Ten is doing better than it was a year ago. We all know that in terms of basketball. How many teams? There were 4 teams that made the tournament last year for the Big Ten, the entire tournament, NCAA tournament, 4 teams last year. How many teams this year right now are in the top 25, and how many teams this year, including others receiving votes, are in the top 25 and receiving votes? So I guess a little 2-part question. How many in the top 25? How many also others receiving votes, do you think?
Okay, well, I have to preface this to the listeners. I have not looked at the poll, and I know that's probably why you asked me the question.
Yeah.
So I was actually going to put a Twitter poll out when we posted our Go Big preview, but I didn't because I'm like, I'm going to wait till the season starts to ask the question. How many teams do you think the Big Ten? I mean, I put it out there just as, hey, we talked about it last week, right. But it's intriguing. So I think as of this week's poll, I'm going to say there's 7 teams in the top 25, and I'm going to say there's 2 additional teams receiving votes.
So close. So close. Yeah, there's 7 teams in the top 25. That's half the conference. Conference has 14 teams. Half the conference is in the top 25. I think that says something. I don't think the ACC has 7. I'll count it in a second. I don't think they have 7. And everyone loves to point the ACC as the best basketball conference. And I'm not saying the Big Ten's better, but it's interesting. That's a big number. You've also got 3 in others receiving votes. That's 10. 10 of the 14 teams. Like,
no,
in the top
no
25?
Rutgers, though, huh? No Rutgers?
Unfortunately, there is no Rutgers. There's no Rutgers. There's no Illinois. See if I can do this.
Yeah, it's probably easier to say who's not in or who's not near the top 25. So we got Rutgers, sorry to interrupt, no Rutgers.
Rutgers, Illinois. Who are the other 2? I'm trying to think. I can't do it here.
Maybe it's not easier. All right, well, carry on, youngster. Where are the Big Ten teams falling in this week's AP Top 25?
I'm still thinking for a second here because I'm mad at myself. Because Minnesota's in there. Minnesota's
we'll
others.
We'll figure it out.
Yeah. I'm mad at myself. Anyway, Kansas 1, Duke 2, Tennessee 3, Michigan 4. That's the first Big Ten team. I'll list off the top 10, I guess. Virginia 5, Nevada 6, Auburn 7, Gonzaga 8. Gonzaga, I expect Gonzaga to either lose to Duke before the national title game or be in the national title game. That's what I think of Gonzaga. They lost to North Carolina this past week. And it's funny because North Carolina is actually 9, which makes no sense to me whatsoever how that works. But Michigan State also 10. There's your second Big Ten team. So Michigan 4, Michigan State 10. Also, we have to go down a little bit. 15, Ohio State. And this is where they start really coming in. 15, Ohio State. 16, Wisconsin. Then you have to go down a little bit. 22, Indiana. 23, Iowa. 25, Nebraska. So there are 5 teams in the Big Ten. 5 teams in the top 25 from the Big Ten ranked 15 through 25. That's pretty insane. And that goes to show last week during our little preview, if you didn't listen to basically all 2 hours of that, we talked about how strong and how many teams were in the middle of the pack and how 3 or 4 of them are going to make the NCAA tournament. There's going to be 3 or 4 schools that obviously deserve to be in the tournament. There's going to be about another 7 or 8 that it's like, this team could make the tournament. 3 or 4 will make it, 3 or 4 won't. Because that's really my guess, is that, what did I say a week ago, 7 of them make it? I think that was my guess. And I think you said 8. That's how I'm assuming it's going to go. And you have these little semi-bubble teams, I guess you could call them, either in the top 25 or others receiving votes. That's what I'll say next, is Maryland, Purdue, and Minnesota are the others receiving votes. So, again, the 7 I mentioned are either 8-2 or better. And then Maryland, Purdue, Minnesota are the other 3 receiving votes right now. The other 4, though, I'm mad at myself that I can't think of this right now. Rutgers, Illinois, those are 2. Iowa's in there. Iowa's 23.
Iowa's 23. You got Maryland.
Yeah, Maryland's others receiving votes. That's the other one. That's the one I was mad about. I knew there was a team I was mad about. Penn State is
5-5.
Yeah, but there's still one more. I've got to look it up because
Indiana's in there, right?
Yeah, Indiana's 22. That's who it is. I found it. Want me to tell you?
Yeah, tell me.
It's Northwestern. Northwestern.
Oh yeah, we forgot about good old Northwestern.
Yeah. Yeah, those I think that's fair, though, to bring up, is that I think those 4 teams are not going to make the tournament, for sure. I think
we mentioned it last week.
Yeah.
So there you go, folks. Find us on Twitter at Youngster Old Man. Go listen to last week's show, or just stay on The Grueling Truth where you're listening to this one, and click on our Go Big preview. It was our 3rd one, Kevin. Can you believe this is our 3rd year doing Go Big Ten basketball? 3rd year.
Yeah. Good stuff. I like it, obviously. Those 4 teams, Northwestern, Penn State, Rutgers, Illinois, I don't see them making the tournament this year. The other 10, you could make an argument for. Again, there will be 3 or 4 that it's like, yeah, obviously, they're making the tournament. The other 6, 7, you'll be able to make a case for. I think that's...
Yeah, and it's like I said last week, Kevin, on the show, and I'll just kind of parlay off that, is it's all going to come down to how bad they beat each other up. I mean, if we talk about, taking care of your home court, winning at home, and then going on the road in the Big Ten is tough. If you've got 4 or 5 teams that are below 500 in the Big Ten, even if it's one game, it's not going to look good for the committee. So these teams got to separate themselves. And how do you separate yourself? Take care of business at home, and then you got to steal a couple games on the road. And you could do that, but the thing is, you look at the 10 teams that are receiving votes, and I'll just say receiving votes. Excuse me. You're not going to have 10 teams over 500 in the Big Ten. There's no way in the world. It's not going to happen. So a lot of it's going to come down to what else happens around the country. How does the committee view these teams? Are they strong? So the thing that I'm liking right now, youngster, before the new year, before the conference season starts, these teams are taking care of business with their cupcake schedule. And that's what I call it, the preseason. They're taking care of business, whereas last year, a lot of these teams, you would see them at 6-4, 7-4, 7-3, losing some games they probably shouldn't have lost.
Yep.
And that hurts at the end of the year. I mean, look at Nebraska. They had a great Big Ten record, but, man, their non-conference wasn't that great as far as the committee was concerned. And, again, You got to play preseason games and play cupcake games. I understand that. But what I like is that you have these 10 teams that are receiving votes that are taking care of business. Yeah, there's some bad. I mean, we could go through the fine-tooth comb if we wanted to make this show 6 hours and go through every team's schedule, which we're not going to do.
No.
And you could find losses like, how the heck could you lose that game? And that's a bad loss. But for the most part, you're looking at teams that are positioning themselves to get near that 10-win mark before the conference season starts.
Yeah.
And that's good. That's what you need. You need to do it, and especially if you're going to be one of those teams that is hovering around 500 in the conference, you have to have a dominant non-conference cupcake schedule to win. You just have to. Or you've got to play an extremely hard schedule and win more than you lose with those ranked teams, which not a lot of teams do. Not a lot of them are going to take that chance. They're not going to chance making the NCAA tournament. So they're going to flutter it with a bunch of cupcakes, and last year they didn't take care of business. This year, they're taking care of business. But I think at the end of the day, Kevin, what it's going to come down to is how are those middle teams? Are they going to separate themselves, or is it going to be 6 teams that are 500 in the conference because they win at home and lose on the road? If that's the case, you may only see 4 or 5 teams from the Big Ten in the big dance again. So we're looking at it from the big picture like, man, this conference is 10 deep and 10 good quality teams. But when March rolls around, we might be only talking again about 4 or 5 teams getting in based on how the season rolls out. That's my only concern. And that doesn't mean that, okay, well, you're going to leave a Wisconsin out. Okay, well, you know, they were, one game under 500. They're still a good team, but they didn't separate themselves. That could be our conversation at the end of the Big Ten schedule, Kevin. Very well could be. That's all I got. That's all I got for our basketball part, if you have anything else to add.
I wanted to go through very quickly what happened this past week, very quickly, to wrap up this show. Since last week's show, Maryland destroyed Loyola, Maryland by 23. Minnesota beat North Florida. That was on last Tuesday. And last Thursday, Wisconsin ran through Savannah State. Last Friday, there was nothing. Last Saturday, that was the big day that I really wanted to go through quickly here. Michigan kind of struggled with Western Michigan, but eventually they won 70-62. That's why Michigan is number 4 in the country right now. Ohio State barely got past Bucknell. Bucknell is one of those teams, those mid-majors that it seems like more often than not they're in the tournament.
They find their way in the tournament. They've got tournament experience. Yeah.
So that being a close game wasn't a huge shock to me. I don't think the world of Ohio State. I think they're good, but I don't think they're fantastic. So that didn't surprise me. I'm sure it surprised some people, though. Iowa destroyed Northern Iowa. This Northern Iowa team is only 4-6 this year, so maybe that.
Yeah, not a typical Northern Iowa team that has made runs in the tournament.
Yeah. So Iowa in the top 25. 8-2 right now. Good for you. Illinois destroyed East Tennessee State, as they should. Penn State played NC State. That's a tough one, and NC State won that one. So Penn State is now 5-5, and if you're 5-5 and you're sneaking toward Big Ten play, say they go 6-6. They've got a couple games left. Each of these teams, I think, has 2 games left before the Big Ten play really gets going. Each team has played 2 Big Ten games to this point, but if you're 6-6, if you're 7-5, you've got a long way to go. In the Big Ten season, in order to get to 20 wins and build a good resume to actually be included in the Big Dance, even though it's 68 teams deep, it gets kind of hairy because there's like over 300 D1 teams in basketball. So there are a lot of quality basketball teams at the end of the year with interesting resumes, at least can put it that way. Rutgers played Seton Hall. Rutgers lost by 6. That's not bad. I think that was at Seton Hall, and they lost by 6. That's not terrible. Seton Hall's a decent program. Purdue played Notre Dame. That's the one I think that was really interesting. Well, there were a couple interesting ones, but Purdue lost to Notre Dame 88-80. And if you watch this game, I was able to watch it in the background. This is really, it's not looking good for Purdue. And Purdue is 6-5 right now. I know they're in others receiving votes, but it's a lot of a one-man show. And I think part of that is coaching, and I think part of that is personnel. Because at one point there was a fan I saw that tweeted out, a Purdue fan, that said, we've got a grad transfer, we've got a walk-on, and we've got a 3-star recruit right now starting in our backcourt that's out on the court right now. That's not necessarily a coaching issue. That can be a recruiting issue, that you don't have enough legitimate guys at any given time. But Carson Edwards is an NBA player for sure, no doubt. Ryan Klein can shoot it. Matt Harms is long. Other than that, this team is really one-dimensional with Carson Edwards. And I think this year in the Big Ten, that's just not going to be good enough. And I want to see Carson Edwards in March Madness, but I really, honestly, at this point, don't think Purdue is going to make it. So that was my take on watching a full Purdue game this year for the first time. It's just a lot of a one-man show, and that's just not going to get it done in the Big Ten consistently. Got anything to add there, Troy?
No, it just you have to have a supporting cast, and we talked about that Purdue team last year where you had so many threats and you didn't know where the ball movement was going to go. And now you try to shut down Edwards and you make somebody else beat you. And I'll circle back to what we're talking about 10 teams in the conference, excluding Purdue, so 9 other teams. And I would get rid of Michigan State. So that brings it down to, 7? Those 7 other teams were young last year. They were in the same boat as Purdue is right now. You got one guy that maybe stands out above the rest, and some other guys got to step up and put daggers into the other team, and they didn't do it because they were young and they were learning. And now this year is a very pivotal year for a lot of those young guys that had all that experience last year to be able to step up on the court and prove and learn from everything that happened last year. And I think we're seeing it early in the season. Now, the Big Ten schedule, that's a different beast. That's going to be a totally whole part of the season. But right now, things are looking good for those young guys. Purdue, they had a heavy team of complement players last year where you didn't know on any given game who was going to drop down 15 or 16 points. And you had multiple guys that could do 15 or 16 points. They just don't have it. So now you can play your defense and you can find a way to stop Edwards, make somebody else beat you, and until that happens, Purdue's going to be a 500 team. That's the way that it rolls.
Yep, agreed, 100%. The last game on Saturday, this past Saturday, Indiana played Butler. That's a legitimate matchup. Indiana won that 71-68 on a buzzer beater 3. So it was a cool.
Oh, the joys of college basketball and buzzer beaters.
Yeah,
love it.
Cool.
I love it.
Cool ending to see. Good game overall. Indiana ranked at 25. It just that makes sense. Makes sense. They moved up to 22. But yeah, they're a top 25 team. They're nothing insanely special, but they're a good team, no doubt about it. Juwan Morgan has 35 points in this game. 35 of the team's 71. That was unbelievable. Juwan Morgan. I believe he's a senior, either a junior or senior. Romeo Langford, the star freshman, obviously played his role as well. Top 5 recruit. But this Indiana team's good. No doubt about it. Fun to watch. So that was cool to see. The last action of the weekend before this show, before we're talking here on Sunday, a day ago, Michigan State beat Green Bay by 21 points, and Nebraska beat Oklahoma State by 23. So
my Fighting Phoenix fell. My Fighting
they
Phoenix.
Did.
Oh, boy. Did they even
they
have
lost
a
to
chance?
Michigan State. Yeah, probably not. They scored 83. I think that's impressive. They gave up 104.
I'm trying to figure out, Tom Izzo, why are you scheduling Green Bay? Now, there was. I will tell you. This is – what year were you born again, youngster?
91.
No, I don't think that was the year. I don't even think you were born yet. I think it was 1990. Is it the 1990 tournament when Green Bay pushed Michigan State to the buzzer in the NCAA tournament? I can't remember the year. It was might have been 89. It was either 89 or 90.
Not that I would remember.
No, you wouldn't remember.
No, not that I would remember early 90s, but I don't remember UW Green Bay ever making the men's tournament. Ever.
Oh, they did when Tony Bennett was the point guard, the coach of Virginia. He played at UW Green Bay, and he was the point guard, and he was a very good one. And that Green Bay team made tournaments because they won the league. They got the automatic bid, and they played against Michigan State. And I actually skipped class at UW Whitewater to go back to my dorm room because it was one of the early games on a Thursday.
I love those.
And I was sitting there and yelling, and people are like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "My Fighting Phoenix are playing Michigan State toe-to-toe to the end." It was amazing. It was amazing. They ended up losing, but they fought, and they hung in there with mighty Michigan State in the tournament. It was one of my most memorable times of the tournament because UW Green Bay was in the tournament. It was, coming from Green Bay to have them in the tournament, it was awesome. So, now Tony Bennett is the coach of Virginia. So, that was one of my big memories. But what else you got, youngster? Otherwise, we can let these wonderful listeners go.
Nothing. I'm done. I'll shut up.
All right. Well,
we'll
finish it this way. Make sure you find us on Twitter at TroyRobert967, at KidCunny, KIDCUNI. And, of course, make sure you follow our show handle at Youngster Old Man. That's where we post all the links to all of our shows. Have a good day, everybody. Thanks for listening.